What if Tony Stark's story didn't actually end with his sacrifice in Endgame?
Iron Man.
What if Marvel has been carefully planting clues, setting up a twist that flips everything we thought we knew about the character? Imagine Robert Downey Jr. not only coming back as Iron Man, but also taking on the role of one of Marvel's most dangerous villains, Doctor Doom.
I am Victor.
As wild as it sounds, there's growing evidence that this may be exactly what Marvel Studios is building toward. And if true, it could be the boldest storytelling move the MCU has ever attempted. But before we can understand Tony Stark's shocking return, we have to rewind to the decision that may have broken the multiverse in the first place. Every great Marvel twist begins with a single rumor, and this one might be the most important yet. It doesn't start with Tony Stark, or even with Doctor Doom. It begins with Steve Rogers, the man who chose to put down the shield and live the quiet life with Peggy Carter. On the surface, that ending in Avengers Endgame felt like the perfect send-off. After years of sacrifice, Steve finally got the chance to dance with the woman he loved. Fans cheered, tears were shed, and it felt like closure. But what if that happy ending wasn't so simple? According to one of the most reliable scoopers in the Marvel space, My Time to Shine, Hello Steve's decision may have triggered something catastrophic, the unraveling of the multiverse itself. By stepping outside his original timeline and living out a life he was never meant to have, Rogers could have destabilized the very fabric of reality. Instead of a quiet retirement, his actions might have been the spark that set the stage for the collapse of entire worlds. And this isn't just vague speculation. The rumor specifically ties into the storyline of Avengers Doomsday. Supposedly, Doctor Doom will play a central role in that film, hunting down those responsible for creating incursions, the dangerous collisions between universes that threaten to wipe out everything. One of the prime targets on his list, Steve Rogers himself. Now pause and let that sink in. The man celebrated for making the right choice may have actually doomed the multiverse. Doom, a character known for ruthless logic and an obsession with control, chasing down Captain America, not out of malice, but because in his eyes, Rogers' decision fractured reality. It's an idea that instantly flips everything we thought we knew about Steve's ending. What once looked like closure now feels like the beginning of something far darker. But this rumor doesn't stop at Steve, because if incursions are spreading from choices made in Endgame, then other characters are automatically pulled into the crossfire. That includes Tony Stark. And this is where things get even more fascinating, because the whispers about Doom, Tony, and the multiverse all begin to intertwine. See, the biggest scooper names like Daniel RPK have been doubling down on this. He claims Doom won't just be after Rogers, but multiple heroes who caused incursions. Intentionally or not, imagine the kind of story that sets up Doom moving through realities, hunting legends, rewriting their legacies, and forcing Marvel's most beloved heroes to confront the consequences of their own choices. And this is where the tension starts to build. Because while Steve may have unknowingly bent reality for love, Tony's fate was sealed by sacrifice. Yet somehow, all the threads point back to him. The rumors about Steve are explosive, sure, but they're only the first domino. Because once you connect that rumor to Tony Stark's legacy, things spiral into territory so shocking, it changes everything we thought we knew about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If Steve's choice could set off a chain reaction, then Tony Stark's role becomes impossible to ignore, and that's where Robert Downey Jr.'s return changes everything. The buzz around Robert Downey Jr. returning to Marvel has been impossible to ignore. At first, the announcements focused on him stepping into the armor of Doctor Doom, a decision that left many fans both excited and skeptical. After all, Downey defined Iron Man for more than a decade, so why cast him as Marvel's most notorious villain? The answer, according to multiple insiders, is that he's not just playing Doom, he's also coming back as Tony Stark. Yes, both roles. On paper, it sounds like Marvel is walking a tightrope honoring Stark's sacrifice while bringing back the actor who became the face of the franchise. Kevin Feige even reassured fans that they would never undo Tony's death from Endgame. But the real twist might be this: Marvel doesn't have to undo it at all. They can let Tony's sacrifice stand and still bring him back in a way that changes everything. And the hints that this was always the plan may already be hidden in plain sight. Marvel didn't just hint at this through casting news. They may have hidden the proof right in Avengers Endgame, in a scene most people completely overlooked. Rewatching Endgame, one line suddenly feels loaded with hidden meaning. During the chaos of Thanos' attack, Tony turns to Steve and says, "When you mess with time, it tends to mess back. You'll see."
What happened? If you mess with time, it tends to mess back. You'll see.
On the surface, it plays like a throwaway line, but think about it. How could Tony know so much about the consequences of time manipulation? And why end with "you'll see," almost as if he knew Steve himself would come to understand those consequences firsthand? This strange moment opens the door to something bigger, the possibility that Tony wasn't simply speaking in the moment. What if this version of Stark had already lived through a multiversal war? What if he had already fought Doom, seen the dangers of broken timelines, and then returned to that exact point in the battle against Thanos? Suddenly, his words don't sound casual. They sound like a warning, laced with experience no one else could have had. If Tony seemed to know more about time travel than he should have, then the question is obvious. Where did he learn it? And that answer might involve Loki himself. If Tony did return from some unseen battle, how did it happen? The answer may lie with Loki and the TVA. The mechanics of a time heist were already established in Endgame, but Loki's series expanded that idea to entire timelines. Imagine this. Right before Stark is crushed in the rubble of Avengers HQ, Loki appears through a TVA portal, pulls Tony into another reality, and recruits him for a war that spans universes. Tony fights, learns the deeper rules of time and space, confronts Doom, and then when the mission ends, he's dropped back into his own timeline, seconds before he was needed to face Thanos. From the outside, nothing looks different. To the audience in 2019, it seemed like Tony was just battered but determined. But in truth, he may have been carrying the weight of an entirely separate war no one else remembered. And that raises the biggest question of all: who exactly was he fighting? But if Loki pulled Tony into a multiversal war, then who was the enemy waiting on the other side? The most mind-bending theory is that Tony wasn't just fighting Doom, he might have been fighting himself. Here's where things take a darker turn. The theory gaining traction is that Stark and Doom may not simply be rivals, they might actually be variants of one another. Consider it: two men defined by genius, ego, and an obsession with power and legacy. Both scarred, both masked, both wrestling with identity. What if Tony Stark was never meant to be a Stark at all? What if he was a version of Victor Von Doom, plucked from one timeline and raised under a different name? It sounds outrageous, but it fits Marvel's multiversal logic perfectly. It would explain why RDJ can believably embody both characters. It would also set up a heartbreaking conflict. Tony forced to battle a version of himself twisted by ambition, a mirror reflecting what he could have become if his choices had been different. And if Marvel dares to go this far, the payoff could reshape not only Tony's arc, but the entire foundation of the MCU. And that sets the stage for Secret Wars, not just another Marvel crossover, but the ultimate test of Iron Man's identity, legacy, and sacrifice. This all builds towards Secret Wars, the event meant to unite every corner of Marvel's multiverse. Picture Tony dragged into this war, standing face to face with a Doom who might actually be him in another form. For audiences, it wouldn't just be another fight, it would be Tony's ultimate test. A battle not just for survival, but for identity, for legacy, for the very definition of who he is. And here's the genius of it: Tony's sacrifice in Endgame remains untouched. That final snap still matters. But layered on top of it is this hidden journey, this confrontation with a darker self that makes "I am Iron Man" more powerful than ever. It becomes not just a line of defiance against Thanos, but a declaration of choice, Tony affirming who he is, not by accident of birth, but by the decisions he made, even when staring at his own corrupted reflection. This might sound too perfect to be real, but when you look closer at Marvel's long game, the pieces start to line up in a way that's hard to ignore. Skeptics might dismiss this as just another theory, but consider the patterns. Kevin Feige has repeatedly said Tony's death wouldn't be reversed, yet insiders confirmed RDJ's return. Phase 4 felt scattered, with projects that seemed disconnected or even unnecessary. But buried in the chaos, certain stories stood out: Loki, No Way Home, Multiverse of Madness. Each one explored cracks in reality, setting the stage for something massive. It's entirely possible that Marvel sacrificed coherence in the short term to keep the long game intact. And if that's true, then everything points towards Secret Wars being the grand design. Tony's return, Doom's rise, Steve's ripple effect, all of it converging in a climax that ties back to the moment we thought the saga ended. So when you step back and connect Steve's ending, Doom's obsession, and Tony's mysterious return, the bigger picture starts to emerge, and it could be Marvel's most daring twist yet. So step back and look at the pieces: Steve's fateful decision, Doom's relentless pursuit, Tony's cryptic words, Loki's meddling, and the possibility that Doom and Stark are one and the same. Taken together, it paints a picture far more intricate than anyone expected. If Marvel really planned this, if they seeded it back in Endgame and waited years for the payoff, then we're on the edge of witnessing the most audacious twist in comic book movie history. The only question now is simple: are Marvel fans ready to see Tony Stark return not as the man they remember, but as something far more complex and possibly more dangerous?